What is poppin' NFG? Y'all know what time it is. Finna review a review, so I ain't got much talking to do. Y'all know how it is. Sunday, Easter, eggs in a bucket. Team DWC, no fucks. Popcorn NFG. Let's get into it.
So we're going to do a bit of catching up as far as what's happened since the Bower King, but then also we'll talk about how God of Hammers, as well as the events leading up to it, have really been a part of this huge cycle that has been repeating and overlapping for billions of years. But not only are we shown this cycle in issue 19, but we're also shown what stage of the cycle God of Hammers is landing in. But on top of that, there's also a few prophecies that we see Thor juggling at this time that gotta be addressed as well. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so with us getting into Thor God of Hammers, this is something that's been brewing up throughout the entirety of Thor Volume 6. And technically you could say that it's been brewing longer than that, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why through the course of this, but just to get caught up to the start of God of Hammers, this builds on top of what we'd seen in issue 1, with Thor recently becoming king, and with doing so him noticing that Mjolnir was getting heavier and heavier, which for a while like we'd seen, this had led Thor to believe that he was struggling to lift Mjolnir as a result of his transition from warrior to king, which wasn't the case, but with the number of people who had been lifting Thor's hammer who weren't Thor skyrocketing on top of him struggling to lift it, this is what initially caused him to craft that theory. And understandably so, because the number of people lifting Mjolnir, not even just in this series, but also collectively around this time, it had made it seem like all of a sudden everybody was just worthy. But also with cases where we saw either Tony Stark or Eddie Brock summon Mjolnir, which from Thor's perspective, with him seeing this, it seemed to solidify his theory as far as him becoming unworthy, with him becoming king and not being full-time warrior. But it's also stacked on top of a number of insecurities he'd been dealing with while he was trying to figure this out. Because of Thor, the king of Asgard, if he can't lift or control his hammer, for him it just seems like a sign of weakness. And so what this led to for Thor was pretty much a solution of him doing an Odin's Son reset by summoning Dr. Donald Blake, which is something Thor hadn't done in a long time. But of course, that also went left where the Midgard Serpent made its way to Dr. Blake first, to where then Donald Blake took the Midgard Serpent's power, and when Blake came back, he was just out for everybody who was touched by Odin's magic. And with how this played out, it was such a good story. We probably need to go back and just hone in on this one itself, because the six-part series Prey, it took Donald Blake as an individual character to a whole nother level, especially with him finding out that he was just a means of teaching Thor a lesson. And that pain that he felt when he discovered the truth, it kind of made you root for him. Until he came across Throg. Because when Throg stepped in, he definitely stole the show for a little while. Like, the gnashing of teeth was no joke. But after Prey was settled and a new solution for Donald Blake was figured out, this experience pushed Thor to make his next decision, with this taking him to a place where he truly felt helpless. And with how this ended, with Thor making a call as the king of Asgard, which also was a call against Odin's wishes, but with Thor doing this, it made him realize that he is stepping into the role of king. And with Thor believing that his transition from warrior to king is causing him to lose his ability to lift Mjolnir, he goes to meet with Captain America at Avengers Mountain, and he leaves Mjolnir there. Only then for Thor to get the call like 2 issues later that Mjolnir has been stolen, which really is the call that sets the stage for God of Hammers, because now you have like this mystery of who took Mjolnir and the hunt for finding Mjolnir and bringing it back. But from here, where God of Hammers kicks off, it starts like a run-through of the history of the Marvel Universe, but of course doing this with more of the modern details included, with it mentioning the elder gods, the ancient giants, as well as the Black Winter, the God Tempest, the King of Black, and the Phoenix. But most significantly, we're being shown this because there's a cycle that repeats. In this cycle that we're being shown, it's been demonstrated for ages. And in this example, we're taken back billions of years ago, where two titans clashed. There's blood, there's fire, there's rage, and born from the forge of that rage, there was annihilation. Where in this case, we're shown as an example the debris from one planet being destroyed, causing the annihilation of the dinosaurs. But again, the emphasis of this introduction, it's very much focusing on the cycle itself, more so than the details of this first example. Because even billions of years later, this cycle from fire to gods to rage to annihilation, which leads to entropy, and with that chaos and uncertainty, it flows into eternity. But within these last two steps of the cycle, seeds are planted that will eventually blossom. And from each one of those that blossom, from them the cycle just continues. And it's here where we're shown more specifically with Mjolnir, where a piece of a moon that was made entirely of Uru metal crash landed on Nidavellir. To where from there, as we know, Odin trapped the god Tempest in this piece of Uru, which he then had the dwarves forge into Mjolnir. And this portion is taken out of Jason Aaron's Mighty Thor, issue 12, back when we were given the more in-depth story about the creation of Mjolnir, with a scene Odin weaken the god Tempest and trap it within this piece of Uru that would be forged into the hammer. And really what's happening here at the beginning of God of Hammers is that we're being shown the cycle continuing from that seed to two other titans clashing, and born from the forge of that rage, annihilation, which would then go into entropy, and from entropy into eternity. And in this case within itself, we're shown that the fire, the gods, the rage, the annihilation, the entropy, in the final phase, eternity, that this second full cycle that we're shown is the creation of Mjolnir, which also, along the way, includes Odin trying to control the hammer, which flew him all around Asgard, nearly destroying the place, which at the time Odin did make people swear never to tell a soul, for him then to place an enchantment on the hammer, which would make it impossible for almost anyone to live. But the story of Mjolnir within itself, it was a full cycle. Odin's enchantment was the entropy, and the tempest being trapped in the hammer represented eternity. But then after us seeing that the creation of Mjolnir was another cycle, which like we just seen, it ended with eternity, but now we're shown here that in a world of gods and titans, that not even eternity can last forever. And well after the creation of Mjolnir, we're shown where a new cycle begins again, which takes us to Jason Aaron's Mighty Thor issue 12, which once again starts this new cycle with the Clash of Titans. And at this time when Jane tied Mangog to Mjolnir and cast him into the sun, this continues the cycle much like we were showing earlier, with the dark and the light, which is how it starts with the gods, which then takes us to the next step with the blood and the fire, to where in this case the battle itself is the blood, and after when Mjolnir and Mangog got tossed into the sun, that took it to the fire, and then next when Mjolnir returned, this then took us into the current day, to where at this point in the cycle, we land on rage, which is something I kind of want you to just keep in the back of your mind through the course of this event. But at this point here, we pick up with Thor, not long after he'd gotten the news from Captain America about Mjolnir being stolen, and he makes his way to Sif, telling her to point him to the person who stole Mjolnir. But Sif tells Thor that she sees nothing, which throws both of them for a loop, because you would think Sif would be able to see someone breaking into Avengers Mountain and taking Mjolnir. But it's here where Sif tells Thor that now that Ben Ray Bill is back, let him take care of this, so that Thor can go back to his throne and just be king.
What is this doing?
1,000 years ago, I fought my way out of that cave, became Iron Man. Realized I